Home of the iconic Opera House and Harbour Bridge, Sydney boasts 129,500 millionaires and 16 billionaires. Sydney is a centre of global finance. Its wealthy suburbs include Darling Point, Bellevue Hill, Double Bay, Dover Heights, Longueville, Mosman, Pont Piper and Vaucluse. The average cost of a house in Darling Point is $7.5 million. Sydney is also home to 34-year-old Melanie Perkins, founder of Canva Graphics and proud owner of a cool $2.5 billion. 5 years ago, she and her partner, Cliff Obrecht, bought a $1.5 million dream home in Surry Hills. So how does she and the other Sydney billionaires spend their millions of dollars in leisure time? Just for a change, we are focusing on the women today. Why Sydney? Before we tell you all about the magical lifestyles of Melanie, Cliff and the billionaires of Sydney, you must be wondering, why Sydney? How come the billionaires have flocked to this corner of the globe? This multi-millionaire capital of New South Wales has a population of over 5 million people. There are currently 1,734 people with an ultra-high net worth living in Australia. Half of them live in Sydney. People from Hong Kong, Singapore and mainland China come to work and live here. Often, rich people buy apartments in Sydney for their children to study at university. These investors diversify their investment into retail property investment opportunities, commercial and into tourism. Sydney is seen as a safe haven with a healthy environment. It has excellent education opportunities. The Australian dollar is not so strong and Australia is close to Asia. It used to be a problem for Australia to be so far from the US and Europe, but it is so close to Asia and Asian investors. And China's property market is on a slowdown, so China's wealthy are looking to invest abroad. Sydney offers them that. Melanie Perkins. 34-year-old Melanie Perkins is Australia's youngest billionaire with $2.5 billion. She is the third richest person in Australia. Melanie is the founder of Canva, a Sydney-based digital graphics company that she started with her fiancé in 2014. By March 2020, her personal fortune stood at $1.3 billion. But the pandemic pushed her fortune up to $2.5 billion. That's because Canva allows businesses to build their own posters, social media graphics, and invitations. Graphic designers were trapped at home, and Canva cashed in on the COVID crisis that threatened to wipe us all out. Her fiancé, Cliff Obrecht, proposed to her with a $30 ring. She lives a luxurious life, which is no surprise because she has such a massive fortune, allowing her to jet off around the world. Her social media shows what her lifestyle is really like, and wow, it's impressive. Cliff claims that they are living a pretty modest life. Do you think they do? They've recently been spotted vacationing in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. They have also been seen together on holiday in Turkey's popular Cappadocia region. Then there is Necker Island, Richard Branson's billionaire playground in the British Virgin Islands. He has turned Necker Island into a vacation destination for the ultra-rich and pampered. Melanie Perkins and Cliff Obrecht are regular visitors here in this entrepreneur paradise. Kind-hearted Melanie says she's planning to give all of her money away. Cliff seems to be going along with that too. Mel and I are committed to giving away all our money to make the world a better place. I think with running such a large company with such significant valuation now, it's an obligation on us to use that to be a force for good and make the world a better place, rather than just hoard stuff. So billionaire Cliff has got a heart of gold too. Doesn't that just make you want to cry? The world is so blessed to have such enlightened, compassionate billionaires floating around. But hang on one moment. That's what all the billionaires say, isn't it? But do they ever do it? Can you name one billionaire who has put his money where his mouth is and given away his entire fortune? Tell us in the comments below. I personally would love to know, so I can be around when it actually happens and catch some of that liquid gold raining down from the sky. Gina Rinehart. Mining magnate Gina Rinehart has a massive net worth of $32.64 billion. She is the richest woman in Australia, having inherited Hancock Prospecting, a private mineral exploration and extraction empire from her daddy. But it wasn't that easy. She turned a company with severe financial difficulties into the largest private company in Australia and one of the largest mining companies in the world, producing 47 million tonnes of iron ore annually. Hancock Prospecting profited from the boom in iron ore in the 2000s and from the Chinese market. She ventured into media and cattle farming before moving on. In 2015, she bought up the 4,000 square kilometre Fossil Downs cattle station. It had 15,000 herds of cattle. That's a lot of hamburgers. In 2012, Forbes named Gina the richest woman in the whole world. So what does Gina Rinehart do with all that money? First of all, the most beautiful houses that money can buy. She bought one in Noosa that cost her 34 million Australian dollars in July 2021. This beautiful, spacious 4-bedroom modern mansion has large glass windows and walls that create a sense of space and freedom and provide beautiful views of the swimming pool and beach and the sea, and has more than 2,000 square metres of gardens, manicured lawns and palm trees. The mining magnate has also purchased a historical estate on the bank of the Brisbane River in Hawthorn for around 18.5 million Australian dollars, adding a master suite and a lounge. Gina also got her own luxury cruise ship, aptly named The World, because it is in fact the largest privately owned cruise ship in the world. It has a 3-bedroom residence on board. This floating penthouse cost her a cool 20 million Australian dollars, but she needs it to unwind and she can afford it. Guarding that $32.64 billion net worth must be exhausting. This billionaire also enjoys haute couture, Ralph and Russo to be precise. She even wore it to a White House state dinner with then-President Donald Trump. Wow, Gina, you've really got some classy friends. Prudence Murdoch-McLeod. Prudence Murdoch is none other than the eldest daughter of media baron Rupert Murdoch, owner of News Corp, the London Times newspaper, and that notorious popular British tabloid, The Sun. She serves as a board member of Times Newspapers Limited and has had important roles in her father's company, News Corporation. Prudence Murdoch married Crispin O'Day from 1985 to 1986 and Alasdair MacLeod in 1989. Her family moved to New York City, but she returned to London and worked as a journalist for News of the World, another extremely successful and scandalous British tabloid. She and her husband have invested heavily in cattle farming. Paradise Creek Station is an old property in the Innerville district dating back to 1839. It is portrayed in Bailed Up, an impressionist painting that Tom Roberts produced in 1895. It cost them more than $22 million. These Australian billionairesses really love their mansions, land and meat, don't they? Judith Neilson. In 2009, Judith and her husband Kerr Neilson, a South African-born Australian billionaire, investor manager and founder of Platinum Asset Management, opened the White Rabbit Gallery in Chippendale, one of the most important collections of modern Asian art in the world. They collected this priceless art on regular trips to China and Asia. In 2015, she divorced him, earning about $1.3 billion in the process. So Judith is now rich and free as a bird. Judith has invested more than $70 million in a second gallery in Sydney that has a performance space and residences for visiting artists, complementing the White Rabbit Gallery and creating an art empire on the edge of Sydney's thriving central business district. Billionaire art collector Judith Neilson has also spent close to $100 million buying and renovating property in Sydney's suburb of Chippendale, tracking down antiquated warehouses on large blocks and converting them into large-scale galleries, offices and cultural institutions. She also has her own private residence. Born in Zimbabwe, Judith really has a strong head for property development. She invested $10 million in turning a factory into a gallery, spent $8 million on a second warehouse, and invested $6.8 million in constructing a 4-floor fortress structure called Indigo Slam. This is how she describes her latest acquisition. It has oversized vertical timber blinds that turn and retract by employing hanging chains and awning windows operated by geared winders. The brass armatures for these moving parts lend a finely grained detail to the interior and to the steel, glass and concrete of the building facade. The project aspires to an exemplary level of environmentally sustainable design, with natural lighting, cross-ventilation, rainwater harvesting, and adherence to passive solar design principles, reducing the energy and water load of the building. Geothermal heating and cooling have also been incorporated into the design. Solar hot water and photovoltaic cells populate the roof. Sounds impressive and environmentally friendly too.